Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be teaching how to paint Delicate Arch from ARCHES National Park in Utah. Without further ado, let's get painting. I'm going to be using Venetian Red, Burnt Sienna, VanDyke Brown, Orange, Prussian Blue, and Payne's Grey. The paper I've taped down here is a size 5 by 7 inches, and I'm using a size 2 and a size 6 round Princeton brush. To get started, I'm going to start by sketching out our delicate arch from ARCHES National Park. And I'm going to first start by doing just a dash line just under halfway from the bottom of the painting. And then from here, I'm going to sketch a vertical line to start, and then a little kind of curved horizontal line. I'm gonna let this swoop out with a little bit of an angle here, just kind of crooked and then straight. And then from here, I'm going to sketch kind of a rounded curve off slightly towards the left. And then I'm going to bring it up and round it a bit towards the right. And then I'm going to kind of build this area towards the right here and do a couple subtle C curves. It almost looks like an angled cartoon bird. And then from there, I'm going to do a slight curve towards the right. All right, next I'm going to do a slightly curved angled dash line up towards the left curve here. And then I'm just going to do a subtle curved horizontal line and then bring it slightly downward with a little vertical dash. Then from here, I'm going to do a little bit more of a curve here slightly, and then just a vertical line, and then a slight line going towards the right. And then I'll curve this slightly downward. All right, and then from here, I'm going to do a curved line with a little bit of a divot here. And then I'm going to bring this slightly more towards the right and keep kind of widening it as it heads towards the ground. I'm just going to extend this a little bit more towards the right. Okay, now I'm going to do a slight curve here. There's going to be another little divot right here. And I'm going to bring it back out. All right, and I'm just adding a little bit more of a dash line here. And then I'm just going to simply curve this line like an upside down rainbow curve here. And then I'm just going to do a subtle curve off towards the right here. And then just a dash line off to connect it to the right side of the page. Next, to build kind of my base coat here for the desert rock, I'm gonna first start with a little bit of orange just as a light highlight wash that will continue to build and add more depth to. So I'm just switching gears to the size 6 brush and just doing a light wash on the desert floor. And while it's still slightly wet, I'm just going to start to build kind of just a little bit of the texture and color. So I'm going to add just a few touches of burnt sienna using the belly of my brush, so the side larger area of my brush here. And I'm just going to add a few touches just in kind of a horizontal motion of burnt sienna, especially in these corners. And then from here, I'm going to do a few touches of Venetian Red. And again, I'm just doing these loose ribbon-like brush strokes using the wide side of the belly of the brush. All right, and next I'm just going to take a touch of VanDyke Brown and just add a few kind of crevice-like thinner brush strokes to kind of shade some of these areas, just using the tip of my brush. And then I think I want a little bit more Venetian Red. I love this almost cherry brown. I'm just gonna relayer just a little bit more of that color in a few areas. Okay, and I love the pops of the highlights with the orange. And we'll let this area just kind of set and dry. We may add a little bit more detail later once it's all set. But for now, I am now going to move on to my arch here. And I'm again going to start with a wash of orange, just to fill the whole area. Now we're going to start to build the shading and depth of our arch. And I'm going to first start with a little bit of Venetian Red off towards the left here. I'm just going to swoop it down below. And then I want to add some shading off towards the right here of this kind of rock face towards the bottom left. And then I'm going to shade a little bit towards the left. And I'm just starting with Venetian Red first, but we will layer some more color with our burnt sienna and VanDyke Brown as well. So now I'm going to shade this right area with some Venetian Red. And then I'm just going to do a few little kind of horizontal streaks on this upper rock. Now I'm just going to shade this left lower rock on this right side, continuing with Venetian Red. And I have plenty of water on my brush in between reaching for more color. I'll dip my brush in water just to keep up with that kind of loose effect. And now I'm bringing kind of a textured horizontal line off towards the right bottom of the arch. And I'll do the same thing just below there as well. Another kind of just loose textured, curved horizontal line. And then from here, I'm going to do a few touches of some horizontal lines here. And then I'm going to just subtly shade the right side a bit, just to help define it. And then where this little divot is, I'm going to do a kind of horizontal, slightly angled line here, and I'll do a smaller second one just below, just really loose and textured. And then I'm just going to bring in a little bit of a watered down touch of Venetian Red all the way across this rock face here. And I'm just going to define this crevice here a little bit more. All right, and now I'm going to continue going up. I'm going to shade this left side. And then where this divot is, I'll do another horizontal line. And then another one off towards the right. I'm going to grab some water with my brush here and just subtly buff out some of the shading here. Okay, now I'm just going to go and shade this left side of this curve and the bottom of the arch as well. And I'm going to help define the right side. And then just do a dash of a horizontal line in this divot towards the right. And then just taking a little bit of water to help kind of buff out the harshness. All right, next I'm going to sketch just a couple kind of dainty horizontal lines up towards the top here that are very loose and jagged and textured. I'll do another little angled line in this kind of divot off towards the right. From here, I'm going to take a little bit of water just to help buff out some of this Venetian Red here. And then I'm going to do kind of a subtle crevice, just a subtle crevice off towards the left here, slightly angled. And defining this little divot as well towards the right. And then just tapping out and buffing it out just a little bit with my brush. Okay, And then from here, I'm gonna take some burnt sienna and I just wanna kind of build some of the areas that I've shaded. And so I'm just gonna take a little bit of burnt sienna and kind of define the shaded area towards the right, do a few more defined kind of curved horizontal brush strokes towards the bottom here. And I just want to help kind of define some of those looser areas that bled out just a little bit with the Venetian Red, and just take a little touch of burnt sienna to help kind of make some of these areas pop a bit. And if the contrast is too much, I just take a little bit of water with my brush just to help kind of soften the transition between the shaded areas and the highlights. And I'm just gonna keep subtly defining those areas with the burnt sienna. And I'm just gonna do that all throughout the arch. Once I've added some just touch-ups and more definition with our burnt sienna, I'm now going to switch gears and start to use a little bit of VanDyke Brown, and I'm going to switch to my size 2 brush just to get some more delicate touches of crevices in the rock using the really nice rich dark brown. So here at the bottom of this rock formation, I'm just going to subtly kind of outline this bottom area and just a touch towards the far right. And then I'm just going to add a little bit towards the bottom here. And again, anytime it's a little bit too harsh, just kind of buff it out a little bit with your brush and a little bit of water. And already we can start to see that beautiful light to dark contrast with our lighter colors against the darker VanDyke Brown here. And then I'm just going to kind of outline this right bottom side and just using a little bit of texture with the tip of my brush. Now just going to dip my brush in some water and just help kind of buff out that transition slightly. Kind of doing a few horizontal streaks, dragging it out towards the left just a touch. And then I'm going to add just a little bit towards the left of this right side of the arch. And just extending VanDyke Brown just a hair bit towards the right where the little divots are. And just doing a few elements of some dash-like texture. Then from here, I'm just going to take my watered down size 2 brush just to help kind of buff out and add some texture, dragging the VanDyke Brown slightly across towards the right. And then I'm just going to add a little touch of VanDyke Brown on this edge here, just a bit, like definitely less than the other areas that we just applied, but just to help kind of define this edge here slightly. And then once we get to the bottom, I'm just going to do a few textured, kind of subtly curved horizontal lines here using the VanDyke Brown. And then I'm just going to take my size 6 brush and just help kind of buff out that shading just a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to take a step back and kind of observe the highlights here and the darker shading elements. And I just want to add a few more touches while I'm taking a moment just to step back and kind of see where I want a little bit more color. So I'm just going to take a little bit of Venetian Red and I am going to kind of shade just a few touches of it off towards the right side of the arch. I don't want the orange to be the main color because that's really just a highlight color, but our base kind of shade, aside from the orange, is going to be the Venetian Red. So I'm just taking a moment to kind of define that and just add a few more pops of that color towards the right of this area of the arch here. Love it. Perfect. Okay. So now I'm just going to take a little bit more Venetian Red, and now that this desert floor is dried, I just want a few kind of wet into dry texture using the belly of my brush. I'm just going to add a few texture kind of elements using a mostly dry brush and just kind of dragging it across slightly. Again, just with the Venetian Red, Just adding a little bit of this kind of toothy texture. Just using the belly of the brush. Okay, and then last but not least, as far as the arch goes, I am just going to add a little bit of burnt sienna and just do a subtle, almost like upside down rainbow curve to texturize this little area between the arches. And then I'm just gonna let this set and dry, and we will move on to our sky. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a little bit of orange with my size 2 brush just to sketch out some of our desert mountain layers in the background of the archway. And I'm just gonna do some really just simple, kind of jagged lines here just to connect this desert floor tucked behind the arch. So that's my first layer. I'll do a second desert layer. I'm trying to make the kind of silhouette of them different from each other. So you can see that there's some variegation there. And then I'm gonna rinse my brush and take just a touch of Prussian blue for my next sketch here. I'm just gonna do a couple kind of more of a traditional kind of mountain in the background. And this one's gonna be more leaning towards some deeper blue. And I'll just do maybe just one more layer here that's slightly shorter in its height, just like so. And I'll let those sketch lines dry in this area, but just above the last silhouette sketch of this mountain range, I want to just do a really simple wash of Prussian blue. And I'm just going to use my size 6 brush to just fully saturate this area with water. And then I'm just going to apply a wash of Prussian blue all the way across this top of the archway, meeting the silhouette line of the mountain and tucked inside this almost little kind of keyhole here. For this very first kind of desert mountain layer here, I'm just going to take some plain Venetian Red, and I'm really just going to keep the mountain layers here more simple because I really want the archway to be in focus. So I'm just doing a light wash of Venetian Red for this first layer. And I'm not using a highly concentrated amount. It's more just like slightly watered down. Okay, and then while this first layer sets, I'm actually going to switch gears to this third layer here, and I'm going to do some Prussian blue mixed with a touch of Payne's Gray, just to kind of tone it down a little bit. And that's a little bit too dark right there. So, but that's totally fixable. All good. I'm just gonna take my brush with some plain water, and then as I spread it out and water it down more, it'll be kind of muted. There we go. All right, I'm just gonna let these two layers set a little bit more, and when we come back, we will color in our next two layers. Next, I'm going to take some watered down, just plain Payne's Gray, and just paint that right above that first blue mountain. And then in this second layer here, I'm going to take some burnt sienna and just do a wash right in here. Now I'm just going to take a step back and kind of add some finishing touches. Just look at where I may need some more detail. And first thing I want to do is just define the lower arch right on this right side with just a touch more VanDyke Brown, just to make this pop a little bit more. So just doing some curved kind of brushwork here, and then I'll do just a couple touches of that on this far right side. Then I'm just going to simply get some water on my size 2 brush and just slightly buff the harshness of that slightly out by dragging it towards the left. And I'll do just a little bit of the same thing on this shaded area here. And next, I'm just going to slightly define the desert floor area just before it goes into the background of the mountains, using just a little bit more VanDyke Brown. Lastly, I just want to add a little bit of texture, just a little bit more Venetian Red. And I'm just going to add with my size 2 brush, just some dry brush texture where I take a little bit of water with some of that Venetian Red, and then I use the side of my brush just to get a little bit of kind of variegated texture on this desert background here. It's really loose. Just to help give a little bit more detail. And then I'll just do the same thing on the second layer of the desert using burnt sienna instead. I hope that you enjoyed this watercolor tutorial of Delicate Arch in ARCHES National Park, Utah. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any further watercolor tutorials.